holding for General Hugs.
Where are those transmissions you sent?
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
A communications disruption can mean only one thing.
Okay, I'll hold.
I did it. I knew I was going to do it. I was all excited. I was like getting ready to rock and roll, but I was dancing to the song and I missed the. Nobody cares. Hi, it's Pete and Nick. Welcome to your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars. This is ATGLive, where we talk about the news. We talk about the movies, the films. We take deep dives. We have special guests like we have tonight. Bryan Barry's joining us, and we also I think we also give gaming tips and hints for
That's
Super
right.
Mario Brothers and NES things. I don't know what we do. Nick, help me out. How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing great. And in the words of Brian Finney and Deadpool and Wolverine, let's effing go. I know that a lot of people are excited. Deadpool and Wolverine is dropping tonight for premiere night and then through the weekend. I don't know when I'm going to get to see it, but I am actually excited to get to the movie theater and check that out. There's lots of stuff going on. San Diego Comic-Con kicked off, I believe, today.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
We've got lots of friends out there, not the least of whom is Brian and Holly Fry. Brian is going to be doing a collecting panel, which I'm excited to hear about.
So cool. Yeah.
Holly is hosting a Galaxy's Edge something at some point. So as usual, they are right in the thick of all the fun. But with Comic-Con kicking off and going on, it also got me thinking about the fact that Dragon Con is just about a month away.
This is
and I'm going to get to be at Dragon Con again this year for work and then get to also spend some leisure time Dragon Conning and hopefully running into some Star Wars friends and family and whatever. So there's a lot on my mind tonight, and not the least of which is the Star Wars fun things we get to talk about.
Absolutely. But, you know, we have a website that you can go to. We have social media you can follow. If you're joining us for the first time because you were one of the 2,100 people who in the last 24 hours have watched a video that I posted, you're joining us for the first time. Thank you for hanging out. We hope you enjoy this. Honestly, one of the things about this show and actually all the content here on the SSW network is that we do keep it fair and balanced. You will never see us. You may see us gush over something if we love it, but you won't see us beat something up if it for the wrong reasons. But we absolutely have a fair and balanced look and talk about all things Star Wars. And we want to hear it from you in the chat. We watch the chat the whole show, watch everything that's going on, and we love when people can join us. But Nick, we got to get things going with a toast, don't we?
Look at that. There's a graphic and a video for everything.
You know, and I said it to you last week, and it's true. The only way I will remember to do this piece if I have to run a little video thing.
That's right. It keeps us honest when we try to stick to segments and do things.
Yes.
Yes, we do have a toast this week, and part of our toast is a little bit in celebration of our friend Dan Zaire, who was with us last week. There is a new book coming out. I don't know. Do you have the image for that you can throw up there?
I didn't get it this week.
It's a Star Wars encyclopedia. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, and I'm probably going to leave somebody out, but it's being made or has been written by a bunch of our friends. Dan Z, Brandon Wainerdy. Is it Amy Rickow? Is she one of the ones?
Yeah.
And it's exciting, and I love a big tome style book, whether it's an encyclopedia. That Return of the Jedi book that we got from Clayton and Kelly Knox.
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic. And I think for me, as much as anything else, and I think the thing I want to toast tonight, especially talking about the Fries hosting panels at Comic-Con, talking about our friends getting to write these books and write for Star Wars Galaxy. I mean, not Star Wars Galaxy magazine. That was you.
me.
To write for StarWars.com, to write for Star Wars. What's the Star Wars magazine now called?
Insider.
Insider, to write for
Yes.
Insider. I love seeing the people that I know get to do these things in Star Wars, because that's what it's all about. Obviously, it's about enjoying Star Wars itself as a movie, as a TV show, as a cartoon, as a stuffed animal, as a theme park, whatever it is that you love about Star Wars. But then you get to take that passion and you get to parlay it into creating something and sharing that passion with other people. And I think that is so fun. That's why we do what we do here. That's why we produce shows and put our families on hold for an hour every week so that we can come out here and, you know, share our Star Wars passions with everybody else. So tonight, I am raising our toast to all of our friends who are making things out there in the world, especially this new book coming up, Dan and Amy and Brandon. And if I left somebody out, I'm sorry.
There's a bunch of others too. I don't know who they are, but
you know,
yeah.
I'm glad it's not the Timelines book, because there were like 25 people that wrote the Timelines book, and I like all of them.
Yep.
So cheers to all of the content creators, all the folks out there making stuff, getting things done, and happy Star Wars.
Happy Star Wars. Nice. Yeah, this is this looks like it's just a soccer mom cup, but the reality is it's 40 ounces of rum and Coke, basically.
That's what I'm talking about. My kids call that the Big Dumb Cup, because there was like a Saturday Night Live sketch about the Stanley Cups and the song The Big Dumb Cup. So every time we see them, they just call them Big Dumb Cups, even though they have them too.
Yeah, of course. So there has been some Star Wars news this week. There's a little bit more than just the Acolyte. What we want to do tonight, we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the news stories that we got, only a handful. We're gonna get to our guest Bryan Barry, and we will also then at the end of the evening, we want to be watching your comments. We're going to sort of do a post-mortem on the Acolyte and really kind of dig into some of the interesting things that came out of it. We're not going to probably dig too much into the story, but kind of talk about the culture that surrounded the Acolyte. But before we do that, let's get to the news. Well, Nick, the first news story of the night is that Star Wars is returning to Jakku.
We're going back to Jakku, that's where.
No, we can't go back to Jakku.
Jakku? A junkyard?
Thank you, junkyard. Why does everyone want to go back to Jakku?
Apparently, Star Wars wants to go back to Jakku. Marvel Comics has unveiled an ambitious plan at San Diego Comic-Con, promising fans an immersive journey into the Star Wars universe with their upcoming limited series focused on the Battle of Jakku. The first installment, titled Insurgency Rising, is set to debut on October 2nd, marking the beginning of a narrative bridge between the OT and the sequel trilogy. This series will feature beloved characters like Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, alongside new heroes and villains pivotal to the aftermath of the Battle of Endor and the eventual Empire's collapse. Marvel promises to delve into Emperor Palpatine's secret contingency plans and introduce new threats emerging during this turbulent period in the galaxy. Following Insurgency Rising, fans can anticipate two more 4-issue miniseries, one called Republic Under Siege and one called Last Stand, slated for release in later 2024 and possibly extending into 2025. Written by our friend Alex Segura, these series aim to expand the lore and deepen the understanding of the galaxy's transformation post Return of the Jedi. I am sure we will get more information about these as Comic-Con continues over the next several days. Nick, you and I don't read comic books. I have to say, I will be reading this one. This is one I'm going to jump into. Yeah, we don't want comics. Now that I just hope Chris isn't watching, because he'll be very upset. What's your thoughts on this? Is this one you'll dig into?
I can't wait for you to tell me the story of this comic after you read it. And it's not because I'm not interested in the comic. Actually, here's the deal. And I'm one of these guys. I will read this because I love Alex Segura. I really enjoyed the Poe Dameron Freefall book that he wrote. He has been on with us a couple of different times. It's really funny. I didn't know that he was writing this one. And so hearing you say that, purely by coincidence, because I wasn't aware of that particular detail, I was thinking about our show and upcoming weeks of ATGLive, and he was somebody who popped into my head that I thought, we haven't talked to him in a while. So we will be reaching out to Alex to see if we can get him to come and join us, especially after tonight, after the publishing panel happens at Comic-Con, and a lot of that stuff is going to be, more public facing. I hope we can get him in there. But yeah, I will definitely check these out simply because I like the creator, as we talked about in our toast. But why not tell some Jakku stories? What about, Unkar Plutt? What about Duquesne and the people who keep fighting over the Falcon? And, why does everybody want to go back to Jakku? Let's get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
I thought Tatooine was our only sand planet. Come on now.
I'm not going to go into my issue with Jakku as a planet. But anyway, listen, though, I am excited about it because I do want to know what happened. But I also have to say I'm extremely cautious and worried, only because I always feel like comic books take things into a direction that is very unique and a little bit too comic booky, frankly. And so I do have some concerns about that. And perhaps maybe what the better way to do this, in sort of deference to our friend Matt in the chat, maybe if they're doing this whole animated thing, they can make the next animated show maybe be this series. Maybe take this and bring it to the masses, because the masses aren't going to read it because it's a comic book. I hate to say it. Please forgive me,
It's going to have a good audience. It's just not going to be an animation audience. It's correct. It's different genres, different areas, different things for people to get into. Well, our next story is, I don't know if you know this, Pete, but Corvette Summer, the sequel, ? After teasing it last week, the band Green Day have just released a fun new music video for their song Corvette Summer, which is on their Saviors album. It takes its name of the song from the 1978 adventure comedy film starring none other than Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill. So the punk legends thought there was only one option when it came to their own music video, but to bring in Luke Skywalker himself for a big appearance, also including comedian Hannibal Buress. Rev up those engines. The Corvette Summer music video is here, and it's one wild ride, they announced. They also go on to say the song was named after one of our favorite cult classic movies, so it only made sense to pay homage to it with the music video. We even took things one step further and got Mark Hamill, who starred in the original, to star in our remake alongside us, Hannibal Buress, and some others. We blew the entire budget on them, they said, so we had to get creative with cardboard boxes, some duct tape, and Matchbox cars that we found in Trey's basement. The video is directed by dynamic duo Ryan Baxley and Brendan Walter. Buckle up and enjoy the ride, as they say. So a couple of things, Pete. If you haven't watched the video yet, it's a lot of fun.
I did watch it. Yeah, I checked it out.
Team America, World Police, you've got little cardboard cars and cutting away. But here's my bigger question before we talk a little bit more kind of the significance of why I wanted this for a news story tonight. Did you watch Corvette Summer? When's the last time you watched Corvette Summer?
I've never watched Corvette Summer. And you sent me the story, so I had to go check it out. And I forgot that Annie Potts was in it.
Annie Potts, that's right. Bo Peep from Toy Story. Dude,
she looked great in 1978. I mean, not that she doesn't look great now, but she was great. But I've never watched the movie. I don't know why I never did. I actually don't know if I've watched too many Mark Hamill movies other than those George Lucas creations. What about yourself?
Those little things we call a Star Wars. I have also not. Matt says he watched it again about a month ago in the chat. I was familiar with it. I knew, kind of the general outline of the story. Part of the, I don't want to use the term lore, we use that too much, but part of the story around all of this is right around the time of the filming of Corvette Summer was when Mark Hamill got in the car accident that ended up giving him the scars on his face that we see certainly in Empire and, going forward into Jedi, and that, he carries with him in his life because that's how scars work. But this was a personal, news story because my daughter, who is a hardcore Green Day fan, we're going to see Green Day next month in Atlanta. That was her Christmas present last year. Loves Green Day. I love Green Day. I grew up, in the 90s listening to Green Day.
Sure.
And she said something to me last week. She's like, "Hey, Dad," she's like, "Green Day's doing a music video with Mark Hamill." And I was like, "Wait a minute, what? Like, what are you talking about?" Well, and then I saw a poster or a picture of the poster online, and I was like, Corvette Summer. It all made sense. It added up. But the other thing that's fun about this is, as it was mentioned, the Matchbox cars in Trey's basement. Trey Cool, the bass player for Green Day, is a gigantic Star Wars fan. He has gone so far as to publicly say Star Wars is his religion. Also, not Trey I'm sorry, Mike Dirnt. Mike Dirnt is the bass player. Trey is the drummer. Mike Dirnt is the one. I've gotten this all wrong, and I'm going to put this on social media. So, Mike, I'm sorry. Mike is a huge Star Wars fan, says that Star Wars is his religion. Mike Dirnt's birthday is also when, Pete? May 4th.
I would say May 4th. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's meant to be. So, cool. This is a very Star Wars centric story. It was one of those things that was just meant to be, and it's a ton of fun. It's a fun, cheesy music video. The actual Green Day Saviors album, if anybody hasn't listened to it, go check it out. It's a great album. A lot of good tunes on there, and has some feels that will kind of take you back in some of your Green Day timeline. So, wrapping up this story, Pete, with a question.
Yeah.
Who's another band that you want to see get a Star Wars person involved in their music video?
Oh boy. I'll say Coheed and Cambria, because they're already science fiction to begin with. They have their own comic book series. They're heavy. Okay. I ran into I can't think of the singer's name. It's going to kill me. I ran into him at a convention in New York, and yeah, I don't know if they're big Star Wars fans or not, but it certainly would be cool for them to. I can see them doing something like that. How about you?
Let's do. I'm trying to think. I mean, kings of cheesy music videos, and one of my favorite bands of all time. I need the Foo Fighters to do a Star Wars music video of some sort. Let's have Dave Grohl, as a Jedi.
Han Solo. He'd be Han Solo.
Actually, more likely he'd be like a weird, like Salacious B. Crumb style alien with like his hair.
Actually, he'd be all of them. He'd be all of them.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, let's do a video where Dave Grohl is all the Star Wars people. So that would work for me.
I can deal with that. That would be cool. That would be cool. Well, cool. I think we have one more story for the day here, and let me pull that one up. We have.
Oh, here's a great option. Here, yeah. Jasmine says Weezer.
Oh, Weezer's a good one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Weezer doing a Star Wars video. Absolutely.
I can live with that for sure. There is an update on the Carano v. Disney case. In a significant legal development, Gina Carano has scored a preliminary victory against Disney in her discrimination lawsuit stemming from her firing from The Mandalorian. Let me rephrase that. Stemming from her contract not being renewed with The Mandalorian. A California judge, Sherilyn Garnett, denied Disney's motion to dismiss the case, asserting that Disney had failed to substantiate claims that their decision was justified based on Carano's public statements. Judge Garnett's ruling highlighted Disney's inability to demonstrate that employing a public-facing actor such as Carano was tied to promoting specific corporate values like respect and inclusion. It's just funny that they actually have to fight over that, right? I mean, yeah, I'll give my commentary in a minute. This decision paves the way for a potential trial unless a settlement is reached beforehand. Carano, who is supported by Elon Musk, aims to not only reclaim her role as Cara Dune, that will be fun on the set, but also seeks damages. The lawsuit, triggered by her controversial social media post in 2021, has escalated into a contentious legal battle over free speech and employment rights within the entertainment industry. So there has been no word yet from Disney on a comment or anything to go along with that. I find it, first of all, it's very interesting, and it's probably very specific to the judge herself in this case as to how she responds, which is, of course, one of the great things about this American legal system. I think that her first step is going to have to be proving that she was wrongfully terminated versus not being renewed. Again, if you're on a yearly contract or whatever the period of time is, show by show contract, and they decide not to renew you, it could be for any number of reasons. It could be because there's no character left to show. It could be because they've gone a different direction. It could be because you are an obnoxious sort of insensitive jerk online. It could be any number of things. And so I'm really curious to see where this goes. It won't go to trial. What do you think? Do you think this won't go to trial? They'll settle.
I don't think it'll go to trial. I think they'll settle it out, because here's the deal: dollar bills move the wheel, and there's enough money for this not to be a headache for Disney. For them to go, here's some money, go away. You're not getting your job back, but here's some money. Let's move on, because they have other stuff going on, and there's a bunch of other things happening. I'm not. And I don't know all the finer points Most of my law school training comes from watching The West Wing repeatedly over and over again. So I'm not an expert in the law, although I try to play one pretty regularly. I'm not entirely surprised that, the motion dismissed did not, take, that it is, it's initially set to go to trial. I think if it does go to a trial, that only works in Disney's favor. I think the evidence and the presentation is so honestly, for Gina Carano, take the money and, call it a win.
So here's what I think on that. And it's an interesting situation because we see the way social media works. You and I deal with this on a regular basis. Right. We've seen too much of it lately, even on some of our personal accounts. But the reality here is Disney loses if they settle out of court, right? Because that means that there will be no public record. It'll be sort of an admission of guilt. And they will run with that. The right-wing group of people who have absolutely piled into the Gina Carano bandwagon and propped her up as this sort of paragon of what is wrong with the media, etc. Disney has to go to court with this. If they haven't been able to get it dismissed, which they tried to, let her beg for money and then be able to enter into the public record how ridiculous it is. Because again, settling out of court will only be sort of reviewed and interpreted in a way that people want to without all the facts necessarily.
And that's the thing. Like, yes, there's a good part of me that sees them settling it just to move on and be done with it. Yeah. But to your exact point, I also see them going, okay, you want to take a swing? Take a swing. Yeah. We still don't think you have a case. And, they're big enough. They have enough lawyers. They have enough money that they can go, all right, you guys go deal with it. Go deal with my light work. We've got other things to, happening. So it's going to go either way. I'll be interested to watch it. I know we're about to head to a commercial break, but before we do, I do want to just address one thing from the chat. Benny chimed in. Nick, you'll love Ed Roland. He's one of the great frontmen of rock. Benny, you are 100% correct. And I am very familiar with Ed Roland, the lead singer of Collective Soul. Tomorrow night, I won tickets on the radio at the beginning of this week. So tomorrow night, my wife and I are going to see, it's a 90s revolution. Hootie and the Blowfish, Edwin McCain, and Collective Soul playing right here near us.
Collective Soul and Hootie and the Blowfish?
100%, man. Like, we go way back, like seatbelts and spinal cords. We're going to go all the way. We're going to do the thing. We're going to have fun. But I agree with Benny. I was a Collective Soul kid from early on when they first dropped their early albums, all the different things they did. So
yeah,
I love that Benny knows Ed Roland, to be perfectly honest, and that that's in their wheelhouse. But it shouldn't surprise me either because Benny's a Renaissance man.
He absolutely is. All right. Well, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to bring a face on the screen that we haven't had the pleasure and joy of seeing in a while. And we're just really excited that he's come to join us. So we're going to take a real quick break. And when we come back, Bryan Barry is with us. Well, welcome back to ATGLive, your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars. As you just saw, we cover some news. We're going to go into some deep dive stuff in a couple minutes. But before we do that, the other thing we do is guests. So, Nick, I'm going to let you introduce our guest, and let's bring him in.
Honestly, our guest tonight is Bryan Barry. That's no surprise. We've, tweeted it out all week. We've had graphics. We've had all these things. Bryan is one of my favorite people that I have met in this entire Star Wars experience. We connected early on over shows, and when I was doing Podcast of the Wheels, we got to hang out in Anaheim. We text we did a show at one point where it was me and my wife Laura and Bryan and his husband Tom, and we did a spouses who, because my spouse, very much like his spouse, they tolerate our Star Wars, they put up with us, and we had a show and we played silly games like, is this name a Star Wars person or not? And we made silly drinks. Like, Bryan is one of my people, and so he's been gone for a little bit. We're going to talk about that. I'm so thrilled to have him back and to get the chance to talk to him tonight. So without further ado, let's welcome to ATGLive our good friend Bryan Barry.
Bryan Barry, how are you?
Hello. How's my mic? I was running late and I had no mic
right.
checks.
Correct. And your mic sounds fantastic. You're looking handsome and dapper as ever. And let me just pull back the curtain for half a second for everybody hanging out watching. We have this running thing since one of the first times Bryan was on with me, because Bryan lives in Mountain Time and I live in Central Time and Pete lives in Eastern Time. And so we have this weird thing with time zones. And so every time Bryan and I text, I'm like, it's your time. Like I put it in all capital letters, your time. Cause he always tells me, he's like, I'm bad with time zones. I don't know what to do. I got the time wrong tonight. So I told Bryan the wrong time. So 8 minutes before he showed up, I'm texting going, hey man, are you good? And he's like, oh, it's only 5 o'clock. So I messed up. It's totally my fault, but he's a hero.
Not even
he's
Mountain
a champ.
Time. Arizona.
Oh, you're not Mountain Time. You're Arizona.
West, we don't have a time zone. We are our own time zone.
They don't recognize daylight savings time. You're one of those like 3 places in the country that doesn't recognize daylight savings time. So part of the year you're only an hour behind me. The other part of the year you're 2 hours behind me, and that's where I got it wrong. So we should probably have a governmental thing to end daylight savings time altogether. Let's just pick one and go with it. That's my position.
Let's do it.
But Bryan, you are here. I'm so thrilled to see you. I know Pete's excited to see you. Before we get into some of our conversations tonight, we have a bunch of folks hanging out, watching with us, both on YouTube and on Twitter, wherever we stream this to. In the off chance there's somebody who doesn't know who you are, please tell us who Bryan is. And
well, first I have to give a shout out to, no offense to Bryan spelled incorrectly or anyone else in the chat. Your greatest chat guest ever is here, in my middle son Eli. So hello, Eli. Eli is the best middle child of any middle children anywhere in the world. So
that's amazing.
And not only that, Eli was giving us real-time updates. My dad's on his way. He's going to be in there in just a minute. And it was fantastic. And I was trying not to distract Pete from the news by putting it up on the screen. But Eli, we appreciate your support.
I love you, Eli. Yes. Let's see. What was the question? Who am I? My name is Bryan.
Who is Bryan Barry?
I've been podcasting for many years. I had to take a hot break for a hot second because the internet is the internet, and it was not a good spot for myself for a little while. It got very ugly. Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But I have Pink Milk Podcast. So if you know me, that's probably where you know me from. I used to live stream every week for years and years on Pink Milk After Dark. I see some of the Steam Queens in there now. I love the Steam Queens. Hello. But you're my first. You are like my first live stream in like over a year and a half, I think.
Well,
so
we are absolutely honored by that. We really do mean that. And I have to say, before we dig into the conversation, because I do want to get into what has gone on the last little bit, Bryan Fennessy chimed in. He said, spelled incorrectly, ? Scroll up and see how your son spelled it, because I did notice that Eli spelled it with an I. Wait, hold on. I've got it right here. Oh, Pete beat me to it. So,
that's so funny.
He 100% is trying to call you out on it, but yes, you know what? That's how the internet works.
Sorry, I have something here for, yes, Bryan spelled incorrectly. And again, Eli, that was incorrect.
Oh, there it is. The kids towel.
It's like you never left.
It's right back at it. Some habits, riding the bike, the whole thing. Well, so let's dig into that. Bryan. You talked about being gone, taking some time off, some things that happened. You took a time out. You left social media. You left the creation of the content, the stuff that you did. Talk about that journey. That's something that I think is important. You and I've talked about it. I've watched some of the stuff since you've come back. And I think this is important because we all live chronically online sometimes to a lot of our, disadvantage. And I would love for you to talk about your story and your journey.
Let me preface this with, I think the internet is the greatest gift. I think it is. Hello, Luke. I think the internet is an amazing thing. I am a parent who, right or wrong, lets my kids on YouTube. I think YouTube is a great bringer together of all things and a wealth of knowledge. So I love the internet. And but the internet can be really rough. If you are watching this, you are most likely a massive Star Wars nerd. And we know how Star Wars Twitter in particularly can be. It was really rough. And being a very gay person in a very gay podcast and very open, brought in its own wealth of grossness. But I've been out since the 90s, so I was kind of used to that. The internet was a very new thing to me before we started the podcast, so I was open. However, and it was getting really ugly, and Pink Milk was actually at its greatest height when I left. Like it was, we were bigger than we had ever have been, and I really left very quickly. It was like all over the course of like 2 weeks. But in podcasting and talking about Star Wars, and I love that I'm very quickly back to myself because I have always just been me, regardless of whatever. And I'm a pretty open person. My husband and I have also adopted 3 wonderful children. And I feel like my found family story was a very big part of my talking about Star Wars. Because Pink Milk, if you have not listened, we don't get into deep dives about like canon versus not canon. We're not a trivia winner contest at all because we will lose every single one of them. But
wait, who loses trivia, Pete?
Yes, I lose trivia. Yes, that was me.
But our show, I am very much like a child of Star Wars. I feel like it has informed everything about who I am as a person and my outlook on life and the decisions that I continue to make. And I feel like that's kind of where we podcast from a lot of times and apply it to kind of like our real world stories, and being a found family, that's very intrinsic to Star Wars. So I've been very open about how my family came to be. And it was like May, I guess 2023 now, 2022. Anti-adoption TikTok and Twitter found me, and it got very ugly. And so where I was prepared to deal with nastiness about gayness, I was no way, shape, or form prepared for nastiness about the things I was dealing with and the messages I was receiving. And at that same time, my oldest child was having the conversations of getting on Instagram and stuff I was smart enough to not let him on Twitter, but the whole thing just kind of really freaked me out. At the same time, I was going through a lot on my family side. I was in a very, very, very toxic work environment that was very challenging to my mental health. There was a lot of stuff that was reaching its zenith all at the same time. And so as much as I love a podcast and love talking about Star Wars, my family had to come first. And I think my time away from the family to work on a podcast, like they didn't get the good side. They didn't get the release. I was sharing that with everybody else, and then they had to deal with the stress. So I had to pull the plug, and I'm very glad that I pulled the plug very quickly because my family is still super happy and all of those things. But, I learned a lot also in those years, and now I'm back to podcasting. We'll get into it. Now my podcasting has to change again because life sometimes lifes and crazy opportunities come, and you think you're going right, and all of a sudden the path to the left opens up and you hop on. So we'll get into it, but I'm excited.
So it's interesting because as you were just saying, like you were prepared for it because you had, when you were on with me, when you've been on with Nick, you've told that story. You went through some of the ugliest times and some of the most important times for you, for the community. So I imagine having the family piece with that was not easy. How are you approaching not just social media, but just knowing that this is, you're gonna get hit again just because people suck. You may already have started that. So how are you approaching it differently this time? And how are you, and maybe for people, and again, it does, honestly, I don't think it matters in where you're coming from. Social media is going to get to you at some point or another. In some cases, of course, it's just uglier and worse. What would you tell people who are getting into it based on what you're bringing from your experience, and how are you going to handle it differently so it doesn't become as painful?
I love that you asked. I'm really glad you brought that up because that was, I spent a lot of time. I went back to Twitter for a hot second and then I was gone.
Wise move. In fact, when you talked about not letting your child on social media, I thought, I wish all three of our parents had not let us on social media either.
Yeah. I mean, it was unfortunate because Twitter was my favorite in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I'm not
same.
great at Instagram. I love to look at pictures or whatever, but my favorite part of the whole podcasting world was really the Steam Queens and people like you and the friends that I got to make. And that really all started from Twitter before it started anywhere else. And so it was hard. I think one of the things that was really getting to me, and I said this in a video that I made when I was going to come back, was I think people that listen long enough understand me and know me well enough to know where I'm coming from. I don't know if I articulate it the best way to those that maybe aren't as familiar with my voice and my perspectives, but I feel like it was our listeners and the Steam Queens almost in a way that made it the hardest for me. And I say that in there, you've got this, thank you for being all that you do, and all really wonderful, genuine things, right? Like, I am very appreciative of those things, but I felt like there was this tremendous pressure and this weight of, oh gosh, I now have to be the strong thing. And I'm glad to do that. And I'm proud to do that. You know, a lot of people jokingly call me a space daddy because I feel like I bring dad energy everywhere I go. And we had a lot of younger listeners that I really also
helped them out. Yeah.
Yeah. I took that pride on of kind of being a queer elder to share some of those stories. Right. But then I felt the pressure of needing to be a positive person, and our show is a lot of fun. I always felt like we talk about very, very heavy things. I feel that we got very real and honest, and especially in a lot of interviews that I did with people, we get really, really heavy. And so as a person, I'm a very emotional and very sensitive person. I'm very empathic. So I bring a lot of camp and wit with everything I do to try to be the counterbalance to that.
Sure.
And that was the chaos that was Pink Milk, and it was the greatest thing. But I felt like if I went out at every single person on the internet and really let them have it, I was like, our listeners don't want to read me doing that. They want to read me talk about how gay Boba Fett is, or that Star Wars is gay, and then listen to all the comments of no, it's not, and these are the reasons why. Like, that's why they want to follow me on Twitter. They don't want to listen to me or watch me have Twitter battles, because I also didn't like that. I avoided that stuff at all costs because it's just not healthy. It's not healthy to read. It's not healthy to watch. It's not healthy to partake in.
I'm going to need your tips on how to stop that, because
it's not easy. And that's it too. Like, I started to feel very hypocritical, and that was where some of the stress would come on, because I'm also like, I'm an FU kind of person.
Right,
I am 5'4". I have a Napoleon complex, and I am like, I will go at you. I'm not afraid of anybody, and I'm a very loud.
We're also Gen Xers, so we immediately go. Yeah,
that too. And then online, I was a different thing, and it felt very weird, and it was messing with me. So I had to leave because I didn't know how to be both at the same time. After a lot of therapy, I learned that two things can exist at once. And I really missed my community, and I made the mistake of somehow putting like internet friends and not the same level of friend as friend. Not that I ever took anyone for granted, but I didn't think I would. It was a very weird thing. I learned a lot about how dangerous the internet can be, but also how important an internet community is, because now it's gone. And a lot of it has come back, but I don't have all of it, because when you leave the internet for a year and you leave a podcast for a year, you disappear. But I think going forward, I really took the mantra of, if I want to fire back, I'm going to fire back, because that's for my own mental wellness, because I am not someone who can just lay back. If I feel like I'm going to, I'm going to. And if people don't want to read that, that's cool. And I respect it. If you don't want to follow me, I'm not going to live like that, but I'm not going to take it all on either. Yep. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And then I was just going to really I used to be very proud of not blocking, not muting, and let engagement happen, because I also believe that you have to let people change, especially when you're as confrontational as a person I am. I think if you aren't coming at conflict with empathy and having the end goal of like moving something forward to come together, then there's no point in being loud anyways, because you're just a jerk at that point. That can be a very fine line.
Well, that's an interesting point to think about. And I actually really like that perspective, because I don't know that I have done that effectively myself either. You're right. The objective is not to win. And I think that's the problem. With the people
it's so easy to get into it, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right. When you argue with somebody in real life, it's like, I'm going to win this. And then when you're in that spot, and again, and it's you for the stuff I get involved in, it's over, was the acolyte, did it break canon? Let's fight about it. It's so stupid. But you were dealing with like people used Star Wars and your love of Star Wars as a way to come at you as a person, and that's, I mean, I there's no way to say it without sounding a little bit weird, but I don't know how I would deal with that. And that's, I think that's one of the great things. And one of the things that I was so happy when we saw that you were coming back online, that you were going to join us, is you've handled it with grace every single time. You and a handful of people in your small circle that have come through, who've just been absolutely beaten up, and never once did you open up the flamethrower on anybody, right? It was just, you took it with such grace, and it made me angrier in a way, because I was, does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does 100%. And I appreciate that. I think, and we hear this a lot. I think minorities are not given that. We don't get that privilege of being mad. We have to come to it at grace. And I'm happy to do that. I mean, I'm not saying like that's a bad thing, but I don't think, in someone in my situation and given where I was, and I do feel that like there's a lot of queer podcasts, especially now, but at the time, like I feel like Pink Milk was kind of it for a long time. And I appreciate that we were of the first to be viewed by a larger audience, or listened to by a larger group of people, and a larger array of people than just queer people. Right. And I feel I have a lot of pride for that. And I do feel, especially after leaving, I'm feeling confident enough these days to say I think I helped bring that forward. Maybe that sounds incredibly arrogant. I don't know.
But you did. And no, it's not. And let me be arrogant for you for just a minute, because we were at Celebration in Anaheim together. You had your own panel. You did a Pink Milk from the podcast stage. And if that wasn't enough, Pink Milk is canon in Star Wars comic books. We also had shout outs from the live stage for Pink Milk in the recap of things as Celebration was wrapping. Like, you really did bring something that is important, and it created that exposure for that wider audience, because there are other people out in Star Wars that are a part of the queer community, that are part of a minority community, that are looking at the things that you've been able to do with the positivity. And like Pete said, with the fact that you didn't default to lashing out, default to burning someone else down. You said, we're here for love. We're here to have fun. We're here to be a little naughty at after dark. We're here to do the things that we're going to do, but it's all because of love and Star Wars. And I think that's the message that is the thing that permeates. So even when you come back, there's not one person that takes issue with you took time for your family. There's not one person that's going to go, I needed a mental break. We all live there. We all live in that space where life gets too lifey, just like you said. Yep. And Pete, there's not a better word. You handled it with grace. You have continued to handle it with grace. And I'm so proud to know you as a friend, because you're back and your voice is important and belongs in this community with boring dum-dums like us and everyone else.
No. I don't know. I was proud of, like, thank you for all that. Like, thank you. I feel like, I mean, we were one really gay podcast. I know certain gay podcasters that were not very nice to us were saying I wasn't gay enough, and I didn't ever understand how I could be any more descriptive and open and gay as I was. But like, I also feel like I made it okay to ask. I feel like I brought something that made people feel comfortable, ask questions. If I was the first gay person, they felt that they could ask questions. So I carried that. And that is, like I said, that to me is what I always hold on to. And that's like, maybe it's the empathy that you bring and the understanding. If you're going to be a vocal person, do I want to be a jerk, or do I want to try to be a leader in some sort of way? And if you want to lead, and if you are going to be vocal for change, you have to be a person that lets change happen. And I think there's a lot of people, especially on the internet, that throw the word around, I'm a social justice warrior, and meanwhile they're backstabbing everybody that is also a queer podcast. And I'm not speaking from any personal experience at all, but like
and I think a great example,
don't believe people can change. Yeah, they just don't believe people can change. You're a homophobe, you're always gonna be a homophobe, or whatever it may or may not be. Sorry, but you can't You're not a warrior if you're a social justice fighter. That's what you are. And you're fighting. That voice is holding us back. Maybe it's not fair.
The power in that voice. And I know I've told this story. Obviously you're very aware of this story, but 100 million years ago now, it seems like, when I was doing Podcast of the Wills, and the first time you ever came on with me and we did the Sunday night, we had our conversation. We talked about pink milk. We talked about all the things that you did. And there was somebody that I didn't really know who reached out to me and said, and I live in Alabama. There's no secret there. I live in one of the most conservative parts of this country, especially as far as religious conservatism and all that kind of thing. This person reached out to me and said, that conversation that you had with Bryan meant so much to me because it helped me confront and face some things that I have always believed incorrectly. It opened their experience and their ability to go, maybe I've been thinking wrong about gay people. Maybe I've been thinking it was, and I didn't fish unprompted. They sent me that message. And of course, immediately I sent it to you. I was like, holy crap, this is, a part of what you're able to do. Now, peek behind the curtain, that situation, was great for a while. They kind of, in the words of the Southern Baptist Church, they got reconvicted at some point and went back on some of their feelings. But that's the power of the message of you're a person, and you're a person with worth and value, and who you are and who your family is a person of worth and value. And we all love Star Wars, and that's the thing that brings us together.
Exactly.
But the ability that you have to sit in front of a microphone, sit in front of a camera, and share your stories and your experiences and your views out to the internet, which a lot of times is a shit show, but in the parts that aren't, your story still matters. And it kind of becomes that thing of like the silly old the parable, throwing the whatever it is back into the ocean. There's too many, it doesn't make a difference. To that one it did. And that becomes 100%. To me, that's a part of what you've been able to do and what Pink Milk has been able to do for you as a creator and your story. So I think that's still very important, and it will continue to be.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Well, Bryan, normally at this point we dismiss the guest, but would you be willing to hang on for a second segment so we can talk Star Wars?
Oh, heck yes.
Okay. Well, why don't we do that? We're having a blast. Oh, awesome. We're having a lot of fun with the people in the chat as well. We're going to take a very short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this. We want to find out what Death X Robot is all about as well, and just keep this conversation going because we are having a good time. So we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back with more ATG Live.
Where are those transmissions you sent?
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
A communications disruption can mean only one thing.
Okay, I'll hold.
Well, we're back with ATG Live, your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars, news, conversation, interviews, friends, just talking, doing what we love to do. As Nick just said, we like to talk about Star Wars. There's no reason why we should be like fighting about Star Wars. Well, let's fight about Star Wars. Let's give us just a little bit about Death X Robot. We'll come back around to that when we do the plugs at the end. But tell us about that, and then I want to talk about and get your thoughts on the Acolyte, and less about the story and more about the surrounding activity of Acolyte. But tell us about Death X Robot.
Okay, so as I said, when I was quitting, I was in a very toxic work environment that I couldn't really talk about a lot of the time. Obviously, it was a pretty homophobic place, and that was very difficult, especially then in like my other life, I'm over here like promoting like go queer rights, go do all this. It was a lot, but that's what it was, right? And I just wasn't valued. I wasn't liked, and it was really tough. I went into therapy and I was on antidepressants for a while because it was just ugly. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so I left and started my own business, and that was what Death X Robot was. And it was really like a queer nerd pop culture good shop. I've never owned a business before, so it was quite the learning curve, but it was fun. It's been doing pretty well, and I've been very excited. However, this is like breaking news that no one cares because no one really knows who I am or cares about me in that level. But part of why I've been so crazy, Nick, with you and like unresponsive is because I am now a 6th grade teacher.
Wow,
No
that's
way.
awesome.
How about that?
Like I said, you think you're going to go right and then the path opens to the left. And you think it.
Yep.
Yeah.
As they say in The Last Jedi, this is not going to go the way you think.
Dude, I have been the last like week and a half like
Amazing.
like drowning in like teacher training and all this stuff. I'm really excited. Just an opportunity came, and one of my a principal reached out to me that I got to know very well with my kids and offered me a job. It's an IB school, so I'll be teaching leadership and helping build a program over there and helping get young people invested in the communities around them and how to build communities and how to build nonprofits and things like that. And I love that they start those ideas in 6th grade. It's pretty rad. So I'll be doing that, and that is like a 180 that I never. But talk about we've talked a lot about progress and being vocal and accepting change to come, right? I think one of the things, and I haven't talked about this a lot, so I think some of this being a teacher also comes like literally out of left field for a lot of people, understandably so. But when I started college, I went into I wanted to be a teacher, and I went into the education department, was speaking to the advisors after a year and a half or whatever it is to get your your basics out of the way. And it was the early 2000s, so I thought it was very cool with my little self-made hemp necklace and my little rainbow beads, centered on a little choker. Yeah, we all, if you know, you know.
We got it.
And I was like 20, I guess, maybe 21. And the advisor told me that people like me couldn't be a teacher and kind of kicked me out of their office. It's like, oh, I now, as a 45-year-old, know how bogus that is.
Right.
And I wish I would have known how bogus it was back then. But I was really devastated. I think that was one of the first moments of not just friends and family, but like a larger institution tell me I couldn't be who I wanted to be because they didn't deem me worthy. And I do think now that, years later after graduating college, and I had a great life after it. And now, funny enough, it all kind of circles back in this crazy, weird way. I found myself really emotional a few times this week. Like the school I'm going to, I really, really, really believe in the school. It's a really diverse school. It's an international school. So there's teachers from all over the world. I believe in the program. My kids went through this program. But there's been a lot of like, I never thought this was going to happen. And Pete, I said this to you, and I've said this on almost every podcast I ever went on because it was so important. And as a queer elder and an older person to some of the younger people who love Star Wars, like I am grateful every single day for what I have because I am living a life I never thought possible for myself. And this is like another, like I was told I can't have this, but here it is. Yeah. And it's just another moment of like, this isn't gonna go the way you think. We oftentimes hear that quote and then use it to be mad at Ryan Johnson for how much you ruined. Life cannot go where you think it is because you told you couldn't have something, and life is good. So no, actually you can. And so sometimes things don't go where you think, but it's really positive. It's a positive avenue.
But it's a good thing. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's so great. That's really cool.
So that's really exciting.
And what I love about that too is I know from the work you did on Podathon a couple of years ago and just sort of the general overall theming of a lot of things you do, you are just such an advocate for children. And so it's such a great That's such a great fit for you, man. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah,
That's
thank
really
you.
awesome. That's really
So, all the Pink Milk After Dark, my streamings will be going away because they're not exactly things that we need parents to find out about. I think some of the way I communicate online might be changing a bit after my contracts I've written for social media behavior.
Yes.
And that's okay.
You're representing a little bit differently now. That's okay. That's fine. Oh,
I don't
man.
need to give HR a reason for some teacher who lives, or some parent who lives in, let's just say Alabama, just because you're there, Nick. I don't need Nick.
Yeah, that's fine.
emailing HR at my school saying how I'm, ruining their children's lives, even though they don't go to school and don't even live in the state and don't know anything about it. But we all know that's what happens.
That's the way the internet works, baby. That's the hellscape of the internet.
So, anyways, it's pretty cool.
Exactly.
But yeah, let's talk Star Wars because
That's awesome. Well, yeah,
It's
I mean,
amazing.
let's pivot on hellscape and talk Star Wars because what I want to get for Nick and I were talking earlier this week, and your thoughts on this would be really interesting as well. There's something about the Acolyte. So first of all, just high level, did you like the Acolyte? What was your thoughts on the Acolyte?
Oh my God, I did, but sorry. Again, if you listen to me, know I go on tangents all the time and I really have to plug my son. And as a business person, look at my little son down there, the little marker to the guys, in your free time, watch Pink Milk.
Give that boy commission, man.
Thank you, son.
Extra breakfast coming your way tomorrow, Eli.
Yeah, I've got my own social media expert over there working for me after 5 p.m. He's working overtime. That's great. You're on salary though, dude. Sorry, no extra checks for you.
Yeah. Get what you get.
The Acolyte. What did I think of the Acolyte? Was that the question?
Yeah.
I loved it. I really, really liked it. It was challenging in a lot of ways, I guess. I don't think I found it challenging the way some people did. I think, I'm only on Threads. Like I said, I'm on Threads, a little bit on Instagram, but I'm mostly on Threads because I love Twitter and I love the written form. Threads hasn't been totally invaded yet with nastiness, at least on my feeds. And but I've also learned to block frequently now, so I also don't even want to deal with it. Yeah. But I hear, there's a lot of stuff of it's kind of boring and it's not moving fast enough, pacing issues. I'm like, well, I don't know what you've watched for the last 40 years, but anytime Jedi are around, it is boring. The Jedi are boring by definition. Like, they're boring. They sit in their robes and they talk. That's what they do. And then we have a couple minutes of a lightsaber battle. And it's great. So boring in the sense of, there's a lot of talking head moments, but you get a lot of insight and philosophy and really great things. And I love that the show really brought a lot of that stuff. I was looking forward to it. I do think, we've only had it for what? It finished 2 weeks ago, maybe something like that. So we haven't really.
Yeah. Yep.
Last week.
Was it last
Yeah.
week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've been in teacher training.
2 days. Yeah.
Everything's all over the place. So we haven't had it long enough. I feel like I learned a lot on my rewatch of Ahsoka because Tom and I, when we came back to Pink Milk, we came back to Ahsoka because we didn't talk about it while it was live. And I do have criticism. I don't know if I want to say they're criticisms, but I do not think that Star Wars is exactly nailed down TV shows.
Thank you. It's like you've been listening to my show.
It's good. I'm not over here saying it was bad. I'm not saying it needs to be 45 minutes because that doesn't
needs to be what it needs to be. Yep.
Exactly. I do think more time. I think audiences are different. I'm watching what is it? House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon. Yep.
I don't know if I'm loving it. I don't know if I loved last year.
Same.
It's fine. It's fine. I get very lost. I have no idea what's going on. They all look the same to me, so I don't ever know who's who. I don't know who died.
And all their names are basically it's like Aegon
literally.
and Aaron.
So
I can't.
So Laura and I watched Game of Thrones together. We did years ago. Once a year we rewatch the whole thing. Like we have a few shows that together we rewatch. Every single year. We just finished a full rewatch of Game of Thrones last month or whatever it was. And when House of the Dragon started, we watched the first season. And of course, so we've been watching this one. And this past Sunday night, actually, we waited till Monday night. We had something Sunday. We didn't get to it. So we watched it Monday night. And when it ended, we're watching in bed. She's on the edge of falling asleep, but she's hanging in there to finish the episode. And she looked at me. She goes, I know I'm going to finish the season. She's like, I don't think I care as much as I do about Game of Thrones. And I went, you're not wrong about that. I understand.
And this is what's so awesome about entertainment, because I actually, and maybe it's because I came to Game of Thrones after it was over. Well, it was like the 6th or 7th season. It was near over. I'm enjoying this, but probably because I feel like I have a little more ownership of this because I watched.
You got in on the ground floor.
Yeah.
You got in on the beginning. Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned House of the Dragon, Brian, because one of the things that I've said about, I think one of the biggest challenges for the Acolyte was that it ran in parallel for a bit with House of the Dragon, and you see how an epic story can be told for a similar budget. And again, I loved the story of the Acolyte. I loved what it was trying to do, but I felt like there were some execution issues, which is a whole other thing. But what's interesting, though, Brian, and this is where the question kind of starts here for all of us, is there's something, and you said you're not on Twitter, but you may be seeing it elsewhere. This feels like the first Star Wars series where people are finally getting comfortable as Star Wars fans, as shills, like the three of us on the screen clearly are, because that's what everybody calls us. Where you're starting to see more real conversation. I hate to say it that way because it implies that the other was not, but you're seeing a lot more people saying, I really want to see Star Wars in movies. I'm enjoying what I'm getting, but let me tell you what I don't like. And honestly, that's important, because you need to have honest conversations, and Lucasfilm needs to know what we like and what we don't like, so that they know how to make what they should, what the audience will enjoy. But what is it about this show? And I'll ask both of you guys, what is it about this show that, is it the timing? Is it the show? Is it the time frame? What is it about the show that makes people now kind of like, well, let's talk about the issues I had with Book of Boba Fett or whatever it might be?
In this house, we're allowed to talk about Bruno, but we don't talk about the Book of Boba Fett. Yeah, you go, Nick. You take the lead. Let me hear.
I think you're right. I think we are in a place of, and here's what I think it is. It's the gift and the curse, and that's the position I'm going to take. We have gotten so much Star Wars TV and content. It's a Marvel problem too. We've we've moved away from just movies and tent poles and big things. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm excited to see Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm going to figure out when to go and watch it. I think it's going to be hilarious. The first two are great. I can't wait to see Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, do their thing. But all the TV shows in between. And and there are some Marvel TV shows I love. Like I really did like Miss Marvel. I thought Kamala Khan was great. I like Captain America, not Winter Soldier. What's it called? The Captain America show.
Yeah, the
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
That's it.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yeah, like I love that show. I think that's one of my favorite MCU shows. With the Star Wars show, I'm at the point now as a hardcore, longtime Gen X, grew up with the OT Star Wars fan. Yep. I'm ready to miss Star Wars. I'm ready to take some time and wait for a movie. I'm ready. Like we've gotten so much that I'm ready to go. Give me some time to sit with the thing that I've watched and get a movie next summer. Like I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to sit back and let me miss you. That's where I come down on kind of this whole thing.
I'm with you in part. I'm with you all the way, like personally.
Well, and don't get me wrong. If you give it to me, I'm going to watch it. But if you say, hey, we're going to take a TO because we got into that mode where Solo and Rogue One and Rise of Skywalker, like all these things came out too close to each other. I'm also going to go, okay, cool. I'll wait. Like,
that's true. Brian spelled it incorrectly. We did Garth of Whip. There's so much greatness in Boba Fett. Oh god, I wish they were just somewhere else. Because the longer I'm away from that show, the more I do. I have tried rewatching it 3 times. I can't even get through the first episode. I'm like, oh my god, this is so bad.
Amazing.
I've listed it as my last one. Yes. Okay, Brian. Same.
I want to love it so bad because it has every element of a Star Wars that I love, but it just didn't.
And you guys made a great case that I never thought about before with Boba Fett being gay, and I can totally see that, and I bought into it. You've sold me.
Boom, thank you. I always loved the gif of him like caressing a woman, like gay means you can only like one gender. I'm like, not proving anything, my friend. Didn't say he was a homosexual and he could be bi, still gay. Didn't prove anything, bro.
Other options on the table.
I feel like it's so weird because here's how I feel. I feel like, to piggyback on what you said, Nick, and then almost I think maybe where you're going a little bit, Pete, like in the middle there, I feel like I love Star Wars. Like I love Star Wars too much. Like like literally it is a part of my, I think if I could identify as anything, it would be a Star Wars. Like it would be, and not even a Star Wars fan. I would just identify as a Star Wars.
A Star Wars.
A Star Wars. It informs way too much. I've shared many a time that like upbringing was not the greatest, so that's where I went to. And so it brought me up, and I really feel that way. It's taught me as a parent, all these things, right? So I care about it on a like incredibly emotional, deep level. Beyond the pew 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 is what's lying underneath it all, right? And I love that it's a fairy tale, and that it. And I feel like maybe I'm hoping this could just be the Star Wars fan of me that gives Acolyte this, because you hear a lot of like plot holes and they didn't answer this. And again, maybe I'm not going to pretend like I'm a literary expert or some film critic who can analyze things this way. But my favorite part of Star Wars, and I know it was intentional with George, is it invites you to play with it. People are in a mask. He doesn't give you all of the answers because we're supposed to put ourselves in that story. And that to me is why it's worked so well. It's my favorite part. It really invites you to inject yourself in the story, which is why people love it so much. It's why there's so much nastiness and vitriol surrounding, because we all take it so personal and we don't seem to understand that there's room for both and both can happen at the same time. And instead of being mad that there's differences, be excited to what those differences might be. But in Star Wars is very more faster, more intense. We all love that quote. We all know the quote. We love it, right? And that is what Star Wars is.
Yep.
And I feel like these shows can't do that. And that doesn't feel Star Wars, which is okay. Like I'm cool with like it being different. But you can't have both. You can't try to tell an 8-episode 30-minute show or whatever. Again, I shouldn't say the minutes. An 8-episode show that's faster, more intense. So they're not very long episodes because we don't take minutes to breathe, but then also try to tell as complex of a story as you do in even if it's an 8-episode, 8, 10, 12 hour long season in 4 hours. You can't, that's where I feel like you can't have both. Yeah. Because then we have to wait years to get these other answers answered. You just I feel like I leave every Star Wars show frustrated.
Yes.
I didn't hate what was there before, but I left frustrated. Like Ahsoka was where I think I really, for me, understood. I was like, why did Ezra have to go? Because now I'm left on Ezra and Hera hugging. Yeah. So I know who that is. I need that. But so I'm annoyed that I don't get to know what's going on there. And I'm going to have to wait a really long time. A general audience person, Tom, was one. How does he know her again? So then it left them. Correct. Why is it matter that they met? Yeah. And I'm like, It was bad. It was just bad. It should have ended with them all in Peridia somehow. I don't know how to end it, but that's where they should have just stayed. And the next season could have been one galaxy and everybody else in another one or something. I don't know.
Or end with the tease that says on the next episode, on the next season of Ahsoka. Like, go ahead and let us know. Yes. Because my thing with Acolyte is, there can be more, but it ended in a way that it doesn't have to be. My mind can go both directions. Ahsoka didn't end that way. Thrawn is back. Ezra's back. Ahsoka is still on the other side. Like, you have to resolve that thing. And so exactly your point. And Pete and I talk all the time about the our dads equation. If either of our dads watch that show, they're calling us going, yeah, that was cool, but who was that? Just like Tom.
If Laura my Tom is your dad's or Laura. Exactly. Like, and that's what our show is. If you didn't get it, then it didn't work. Like in that, you could just be objective. Your story didn't work. We don't need to have the debate over anything else. It didn't work. Yeah. Because they didn't get it. And
that was the challenge with Acolyte was it worked. It just wasn't executed well. Make it a 2.5-hour movie. I think it might have worked really, really well. Awesome. Or make it a full 8 hours
15 episodes, 16 episodes. That's right. Yeah.
I think
I had this conversation with somebody. Sorry, Brian. I had this conversation with somebody before because we got into this mode and Star Wars does it maybe more than anybody else does. 8 episodes, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I'll watch any Star Wars you give me. But like, I also grew up with, there's no surprise, my favorite TV show of all time is The West Wing. They did 7 seasons, 22 episodes apiece, 45 minutes, which is an hour on network TV. 22 episodes. Like, there's time to tell a story. There's time to flesh something out. You know, Game of Thrones went through a little, you know, there were mostly 12s, I think. There was, you know, we've gotten these things that expanded. And my biggest thing that I said with the final season of Game of Thrones was they needed 3 more episodes to tell the rest of the story. I wasn't mad at how it ended. I was mad at how quickly they got there. Take some time to tell the story.
So, so the question that I have, and I'm going to let you guys think about it for a minute because I'm going to take one more break and then we're going to do a final segment and we're going to go after that. I promise I'll let you go. But the thing to think about on this break is, why are we all able to talk about it now? What is it about where we are now that this is a conversation? We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more ATG Live. Well, welcome back to ATG.
First of all,
what? Go
before
ahead.
you even get to it, I know what Brian's laughing about, and it has to be addressed. Matthew is 100% right. I need a lower back stamp declaring my love for the West Wing, because it's true. And if you need any further example of that, if you pulled up HBO Max on my phone right now, certainly given the political climate that we are currently in right now,
I would rather live in the West
West
Wing.
Wing is my comfort show. I've watched West Wing more times than I'm comfortable saying out loud. It's the idealized version of what politics in the world could be like. It's the best. If you haven't watched it, I'm looking at you in the eyes, the internet, all you idiots that are watching right now. Please go watch The West Wing. It is truly fantastic. Pete, I'm speaking specifically to you because I know you've never watched it.
And Matt, we need to create a drinking game where every time Nick says The West Wing,
look, I'll start right now.
You know,
here we go.
How about this, Nick? Nick, why don't we create another show that's just a West Wing podcast? Let's
don't threaten me with a good time.
Let's not. You'll have to change your name from ATG Live to Falling Down Live. With
correct. Yeah. Well, and I've said, yeah, exactly. And I've said for a million years, the thing I need is an Aaron Sorkin written, Star Wars about like the Imperial Senate West Wing style. We could get into all of that, but
we might get it with we may get it with Andor season 2.
That's right. Andor season 2. We don't know.
But so speaking of which, let's talk about why is now, and I don't have an answer for this, and it's something that's really interesting to me, is why are the fans now talking about it? Because as I'm sure you remember from a year ago, Brian, there are so many people on Twitter who, and I've seen, it's funny, somebody tried to push back on this, but it's not funny because it's Twitter. There are people who are literally out there on Twitter saying, this show is perfect. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The Acolyte was perfect. But that number is so much smaller than the reality of some of the biggest podcasts, the ones that we all know and are friends with, are finally, or not finally, but for the first time going, I need to reevaluate it. Is it, I love what Nick said about we need time to miss it. And that's a fair point. But the question is, why is it now sort of happening? Is it this show? Is it something about this show that made it now, or is it simply the timing?
Can I take some hot takes or some things that might be considered hot takes? Pete, you're good. You can handle
Absolutely.
Yes, you can.
I am going to call it like I see it and how I saw it when I was offline. Let's see. Well, one, I'm gonna get a. No, I will not say that because I can say that on my own podcast where I can deal with the blowback for that. Okay. Again, love all of you, and I'm just gonna be really honest. And actually, let me be funny first. I think people, just to blow myself up, make myself sound far more important than I am. But you know what? I got on the podcast stage, and Pink Milk is canon, and I got a shout out.
Dude, no, you were huge. You were
thank you.
and you were very important. Yeah.
I mean, honest to God, I'm so darn proud of it. And that was also made it easier to, it was a very difficult thing, but that was I can leave. I accomplished a lot.
Right.
Like I'm very proud of all those things. Right. But I did it. I was never anything but honest about things. I was very vocal about what I liked and what I didn't like. You didn't have to kiss Lucasfilm's ass and bend over backwards, say how great everything was to still be seen and recognized by Lucasfilm. Yep. And that was never even my goal, because like who ever thought any of those things could have happened like ever in real life? So that was like never an objective. But okay, here comes the hot take. And I'm sorry if I offend anyone listening to them. I speak for Bryan Barry and Pink Milk, not Pete or Nick. So please do not go at them. I feel there was a lot of phoniness exposed during the writer strikes. And again, I was not directly involved, so I also don't know. I mean, I would have just covered everything. So I'd been like, I'm not a writer. I'm speaking as a fan. I'm talking about a show that I like because that's what I need to do. And we should still watch it because those people still worked very hard and we should still watch the show. And also, they should also be paid more if they are making them lots of money. Both things can exist. I feel like a lot of podcasters, some of them are very successful and also lovely people on a personal level, the people that I've met. I feel there's a lot of, I'm just going to say how great Star Wars is and never critique it because I like my free gifts. I've been sent promotional boxes before. It's a lovely thing. I like to be invited to red carpets. I like to get this. I like my Twitter exposure. I like those things. And I'm going to play the game to get there. And if that's what you want to do, that's cool. I'm really not making a comment on that. That's your prerogative. But I feel there was something very phony and shady and something I did not like in I stand with the Writers Guild and I stand with SAG-AFTRA and we will not be talking about these things. And again, don't come listen to me for perfect facts and dates. So that was on a Tuesday, right? And then Wednesday, everything was settled. And boom drops every podcast episode they did because they didn't stop working. They didn't stop talking about it. They actually didn't really stand by them. They were doing the PC game, and then their Instagram feeds and Twitter feeds filled up with like 500 pictures of every video that they made because they weren't actually really standing up against anything. You were just trying to play the PC game of you're playing optics. You didn't actually, you weren't true, you weren't honest, and you weren't being authentic. And if you feel upset by that and you're listening, then maybe you should look in the mirror and go, oh, am I upset because maybe you made a point? Or no, whatever, because both things can happen. But I think listeners noticed that, and I don't think people appreciated it. I mean, that's how I feel.
I could not agree more with you on this stuff. I think one of the biggest things was it was weird to me to see people say I stand with the actors who asked people not to promote the show. And I hear what you're saying. And yet they still, they held that up. I support SAG-AFTRA. And then they did, worse, I think, was to say that and then do their after shows for Ahsoka. And that was incredibly strange. And then backpedal and make it, sort of, they made it fit their narrative so that it was okay. And I'm not even talking about the way we handled it because I think you probably supported the way we handled it, but it's, but so what does that connect that to where we are today?
Sorry. Yeah. So I think I think people didn't like the phoniness. They listened to people who only liked things. And I honestly, and maybe they really listen to them because they want a positive experience. But I'm sorry, I think you're phony. You're phony at that point.
Right.
You're phony. And I think especially after the pandemic, I think people really are looking for authenticity. I mean, right down to YouTube for a few months there, everyone was holding up their Shure MV7 microphone. It's more authentic to hold the microphone and have a conversation with you. And I'm not going to edit anymore. I'm going to do wrong things, but
Yeah.
Make it more personal.
yeah, but you're just you're trying to chase the YouTube algorithm, right? So they're stopping doing that. So I think people are after being honest. And so I think people feel like I can be a fan and have a critique. I'm not going to be afraid of being labeled a toxic fan by sharing an honest opinion, because I'm kind of tired of the phoniest. I'm tired of the toxically positive, and I'm tired of the toxically negative. So I'm just going to be me.
And this is where I am so frustrated, because Nick and I know from watching you guys, that has existed. That has existed. We have always, I mean, if you watch anything we do, if you follow me on Twitter, if I don't like something, I just won't talk about it. I will never say I loved it if I didn't. And when you come to this show, I mean, we just did a whole series on the sequels, the good, the bad, and the controversial. And we dug into the things we liked and we didn't like. And I think you're right. I think now we have this weird thing where the shills, the real shills, if you will, or the people who were toxically positive or overly positive are now like, the market has shifted. So maybe I think you're onto something there, Brian. I think the market has shifted, and now everybody's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to be real about Star Wars. And I think, to your point, Brian, I think people are going to go back and it's sort of like that other guy, the Bricks and Screws guy, who made his first 6 years of content, talking about lore and doing things. And then he realized, holy shit, if I beat up Star Wars, if I get on this Kathleen Kennedy train, if I join the right-wing extremist perspective on Star Wars, look, my subscriptions go through the roof. I'm going to do that. So now I think that's where that's going. And you know what? My only hope is that people will be like, yeah, the people who have been authentic since the beginning, the Brian Barrys, the SSW networks, the other handful of shows out there, they've been doing it that way for a while, because you can be, and I think one of the things that we're proving is that you can be you can be critical without being Nick, you say it all the time, you can not like something, you just are not allowed to be an asshole about it, and that's what it is.
You can
it's not hard.
Feel like, at least like from my perspective, like I learned a lot, and when I quit for a while. Like I didn't go back, I didn't look at anything. I felt bad for the people that I just like up and deleted Twitter, didn't even say anything to. Like I felt bad, but that, you know, that's what I had to do at that moment, right? Yep. But in my year away, like maybe 7 or 8 months in, 6, 7, somewhere in there, I just happened to pop on for some random reason, just to like check the numbers of a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, 1 month we had like 8,000 downloads, and I was like, I haven't made an episode in 8 months. What? Wait, what? I don't know if I ever had that many downloads in a single month before. And then I checked that Twitter or that email, because I had removed the email from my phone, right?
Yep.
And I was getting a lot of messages of like, I love that you just talk and have fun. I just want to have fun. And I feel that was something that I don't think I knew was another reason people liked what we did. And I think that's why people come here, because we have interviews and talk about creators and why they enjoy what they do. And we just talk about Star Wars. We don't need to have, it's okay to just talk about Star Wars. And if you put a fun show together, I think, again, no one came to us to learn anything new about Star Wars. Maybe we share some tidbits on life and maybe some life perspective. But I would always like to think Tom and I are really funny. We have a good time. Our live stream was spicy and funny. And I feel like we were entertaining. We were never the podcast that someone went to right after a show to like, let's deep dive on this. We might be the podcast they go to the following week and just have a good time. And I feel like that is what people are going to the internet for, is to kind of have a good time, have a real conversation about whatever it is. And I think people are finding shows that are that, because I think we understood, maybe we all came to understand what authenticity really was during that strike, because I think we saw like you weren't supporting us if you had all this ready to go. You can't hit the drop button and release, 8 episodes covering each episode of Ahsoka all in the same week. So we knew people picked up, they were doing it right then. And that's hypocritical. You shouldn't have watched it. If you were going to talk about it, you're going to stand by the people, you shouldn't have watched it. You should have waited to watch it. You should have not given Disney your numbers.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just a hypocrite.
100%. And again, the value, even the smallest of shows, because the thing that, and then we'll wrap up here, but even the smallest of shows, that was Disney needed all those little podcasts, all those little shows, all those little YouTube streamers, because they weren't on Jimmy Kimmel, because they weren't on the Tonight Show.
Yep.
They needed those voices, and you were doing it. You were supporting it. You were, and say what you will about, and look, I think we all supported SAG-AFTRA.
Yes.
But did you really support SAG-AFTRA?
Look, I think it's so easy. And again, maybe I feel fortunate because I think we talked to a lot of different people. And maybe we had different listeners because we don't deep dive. We didn't do that. We didn't intimidate people out of the room by not being Star Warsy enough to listen.
Yep.
Right? I hope that was one of my hopes that I was going to bring. But I think those of us that are online, or me speaking was online chronically, we know all of this stuff going on.
Sure.
But you know what? A lot of people who consider themselves massive Star Wars fans aren't on Twitter. They don't know about these things. They're not watching. It's not making their local news. They have no idea this is going on.
Yep.
They just want to watch their show and listen to their podcast like they always did.
Yep.
And that's cool. Like, give it to those people. Some people didn't listen to us because they didn't like how political I got, and they don't want politics in their Star Wars. And that's cool, boo boo. Like, I'm not for you. I really felt a lack of authenticity from a lot of people. And there's people like I was disappointed in personally. I was like, oh, I don't know you well enough to make some super gigantic judgment, but I also don't know you well enough. Like, whoever you are, I'm just putting you out. I'm like, I also don't know you well enough to continue to support you. I'm like, okay, well, that was kind of not cool. I'm not going to listen anymore. And I'm not going to really interact with you much because I'm not going to come soapbox on you of my opinion because you don't care and you didn't ask for it, but I also just don't have to engage anymore.
100%.
Also, that's the health I learned from being away for a while. Oh, I don't have to engage with anything.
And I think that is it. And I want to sit this what Marianne said. Civil discourse has gone out the window in the larger culture. It's good to have places where people share authentic opinions and agree to disagree. We do that here. I mean, Brian, you and I have had conversations. Pete, you and Brian we've all had conversations where we go, hey, that's the thing. Resistance, not my thing. You know what I don't do? I don't talk about resistance. It's just not my thing. It's fine.
Right.
I love the people that love it, and I love that that's their thing. It's not my thing. I love Rebels. I'll talk about Rebels till my head falls off. That's my thing. Like it.
And the West Wing.
Yeah, and the West Wing, obviously. But
sitting in the West Wing watching Rebels.
Give me the opportunity and I'll do it. Or as Pete said, as Chris says, or comics. We're not going to get into that tonight. So sorry.
No, I mean, honestly, what you're saying, Nick, it's the truth. Like, it's the truth. Like, peek behind the curtain. Not all of us have always agreed on everything here. We've had disagreements about views on Star Wars. We've had disagreements on views on how people should operate and certain things. But you know what? We're still three people sitting here on the same thing because it's okay to disagree.
And having
it's okay.
fun. And having fun, just laughing and just enjoy. This is what it should be about.
Yes.
If you're in a situation where you're yelling about Star Wars or being angry about something in Star Wars, dude, you have lost the scent. Let it go.
We've lost
it is
our
over.
trail. Yeah.
You know, I mean, like when I left, that really happened. Like it really got really big when I started to I thought I was doing a service and being a wonderful dad. And I want to share my kids because they're the greatest kids in the world. And you're welcome, everyone who gets to look at them and hear their giggles on videos or watch me and Michael talk about the Acolyte on YouTube. Like, you're welcome because they're great. And when that was then turned around and used against me and people had where we lived, knew the state with pictures of my kids and they shouldn't be with you, we're going to take them. Like, that was like so ugly. It ruined everything for me for a hot minute. It made me very scared as a dad. And it really put things into perspective. Like, my God, I need to not get blown up when someone's mad because I said Boba Fett's gay. Like, if you didn't get the joke, again, whatever. Like, if you take any of that stuff out of my mouth all that seriously, I don't owe you anything, and I don't owe Twitter anything to explain myself if you don't pick up my sarcasm, because I also have hundreds of hours of live video and audio that you can get to know me if you choose to. If you're going to make my entire judgment on one tweet, I can't live under that stress of, oh my God, is this going to be perceived the wrong way? Oh my God, what if I can't do that. I can try to be a good person, which I am, and know I'm a good person. And if someone doesn't get it, they don't get it. And that's okay. It's okay.
Well, there's a great clip from Star Wars 1977 for those of you keeping score at home. You can even find it in the modern social media world as a GIF or a GIF, depending on how you choose to, make that choice. But there's a stormtrooper early on in that movie, and he says, "Move along, move along."
Mm-hmm.
That's all you have to do. If you don't like it, move along. It's not here for you.
Do us Gen Xer people call it GIF because peanut butter, JIF, and that was the commercial that was built in us forever? And maybe younger people call it GIF because they know how to enunciate.
Choosy mothers choose
Please
GIF.
answer this question. Exactly.
Oh man.
Yep. I don't have an answer in my kids who are obviously much younger, 16, 12, 8. Like they all have, you're wrong, because it can swing both ways. We have graphics interface. We also have giraffe, not giraffe. Like you can argue it all the ways you want to. So, I'm pretty sure I don't have a consistency in how I say it.
My kids know Great Value peanut butter.
Yep.
And when we bring in the GIF or the Peter Pan, they're like, I don't like this not real peanut butter stuff. I'm like, we did you well.
Well, listen, this has been an amazing night. We have had so much fun. Before we get out of here, Brian, I know you're not on all of the social medias.
Nope.
Tell folks about Death X Robot. Tell us about where we can find you with Pink Milk. Give us the plugs before we finish up our night.
If you want some curated pop culture goods by this gay dude, and we all know gay men have great taste. It is just a fact. To deal with it, move on. Anyone, if you want to know, if you want to know what records to listen to, what movies to watch, what shirts to wear, or what toys to buy, you can head on over to deathxrobot.com. Check us out. Buy some cute things. It's all good. It's all there. To be had. You can watch me on YouTube at Death X Robot. Right now, we will be getting to a podcast. We missed one because, again, training and new job out of nowhere. But you can, and also, if you like my giggles, then you can listen to me with my son. And if you like my giggles, you'll love his giggles more and my husband's giggles more on Pink Milk. And then we are going to get to live streaming. We were going to do it last week until this came up. So in a few weeks, I'm going to have a live stream show as well. Just talking, not about just Star Wars. We're going to first talk about Akira, my friend Brian Higa, who was a former Steam Queen. Yep. And I are going to start talking about Akira. We're going to break that down. We're going to talk in movies and comics and all sorts of things going forward, because I love live streaming and I love chat and I love having people on and talking face to face like this, which is different than a podcast. And it's great.
100%. Well, we cannot be thankful enough for your time hanging out with us tonight. I'm sorry I don't know time zones any better than you do. But as the MVP of the show, you rallied. You said, cool, I got it. It's an hour earlier than I thought. And you jumped right in. So we can't thank you enough. It's so good. And I'm just going to say, personal privilege. It's so good to see you back. It's so good to talk to you. It's so good to do this again.
Thank you.
To everybody hanging out in the live chat, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for being involved, engaging in the conversation. You are a part of this because we do this because Pete and I love talking Star Wars. We talk it into a void by ourselves if given the opportunity.
Yes,
but it's better when y'all are here. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here. We're going to close it out. We will be back next week. Next week, we have, if you're on TikTok, you need to go find the TikTok feed called Make That Magic. It's a fiance and to-be fiance duo, Harold and Michaela Tuggle. Michaela is watching the Star Wars movies for the first time, and she's reacting to them while she's watching it. It's some of the funniest stuff I've seen in a long time. They are going to be with us to talk about this process and being involved in it. Totally, totally fun. We're going to be back next week, next Thursday, usual time. In the meantime, Pete, may the force be with you.
Always.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend, time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.